first of all, I would like to thank somebody special, which is my strategic advisor. So I have a strategic advisor, which is my bike, you know. And the idea of the session and the speaker was doing a walk with my bike when we're going in Barcelona near the sea. And why? Um, you know, everybody knows that the time is changing, that the culture is changing, consumption of culture is changing, consumers are changing. Also, there is a growing trend of consumption of culture, and the consumer are older and younger. And we all together have to really manage these changes. You, with a master program, as student, we are following this program. You are in the first line to observe, to prepare, and to manage, anticipate the changes. That's the reason why we have invited you as a responsible of the three famous masters associated to prestigious business school, HEC Montréal, HEC Paris, Bocconi in Milano. We want to share our experience, your reflection, and debate, selecting three challenges: the digital challenge, the partner sponsorship challenge, and the management challenge. That's all for my introduction. And now Emma, who is our moderator, will do the rest of the introduction. Who are you, Emma? Tell us.
I'm here. Hello, thank you, Jose Maria. Welcome to everyone, and thank you for coming. It is a pleasure to be able to moderate this roundtable with some of the best international experts in business and culture. And well, I'm now teaching at ESADE, but I have more than 10 years experience in the cultural sector, mainly in public museums, first in the Picasso Museum and then in the National Art of Museum of Catalonia, where I was the brand and development manager. Today, we are going to debate about how cultural industries can face the challenges arising with the pandemic and with the new consumers' demands. The idea is that the event lasts 1 hour and a half. So I ask all the participants to kindly stick to the time they have. And I apologize beforehand if I have to interrupt you during the debate. So as for the audience, you can make your comments and questions in the Zoom chat, who Marta Gracia, who is member of the board of the Club of Cultural and Creative Industries at ESADE, will manage. So I think we can start. And for the welcome, we can start with Patricia Vázquez. She is responsible for events and partnerships at Fundación Catalunya Cultura. Patricia?
Hello, everyone, and thank you, Emma. First of all, I would like to express the apologies from Xavier Gramona, who was supposed to be here. He's the Vice President of the Catalunya Cultura Foundation, and for health reasons, he couldn't make it today. He feels very sorry about it, and he would have loved to be here with you and share his experiences as a businessman who loves and believes in the power of culture among all. In the name of the foundation and its director, Maite Esteve, who's right now having a meeting with the culture minister of the Catalan government trying to find new ways of collaboration, we want to deeply thank Jose Maria and Marta for their support and enthusiasm in making this event possible. Thank you very much. And for those who don't know, the Catalunya Cultura Foundation was created in 2014, and it aims to find alliances between the private sector and culture with the objective of promoting new financial ways that allow the development and the sustainability of cultural projects. We strongly believe that the contribution of businesses and corporations to society, and arts and culture in particular, are essential to ensure a strong, healthy, and educated society. Hence why we believe that events as such, where the discourse comes from the same business school and the academic world, are truly inspiring for us and extremely necessary. In the name of the board of the foundation, I wish you the best for the round table, and we are at your disposal for anything that you might need. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Patricia. I pass now the turn to Virtuts Angulo. Virtuts is the manager and publisher of Libros de Cabecera, and also she's the president of the Club of Cultural and Creative Industries at ESADE. So please, Virtuts.
Okay, thank you. Well, it's a pleasure to be here because we, with Jose Maria, are the organizers of this event with Fundació Catalunya Cultura and Inov-Culture Foundation. So thank you to everybody to join us with this idea. This is our last activity in this term. And we are very happy because this course we've done different activities that I think that they've been very interesting. We went to see a cultural center that is an immersive experience that is called Ideal, and was very, very interesting because his director told us his business model. So always this is interesting. And some weeks ago, we did a roundtable with two important streaming platforms, Pluto TV and Filmin. And now we are saying bye-bye to this term with this roundtable that is quite good because we will have different points of view, not only from Europe, but with the participation of Canada. So I think it will be very rich. So we invite to all of us to join us next term to our next activities. They are always roundtables and visits to cultural equipments like museums, art galleries, etc. And we as well encourage our students to be part of the cultural sector, because in business schools maybe finance or marketing are more important than culture. But we strongly believe that culture has lots of things to tell. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Virtuts. Unfortunately, Koldo Echevarria, who is the general manager of ESADE, he just sent his apologies because he cannot come. So I think we can turn now to the roundtable and the debate. So for the debate, let me introduce you. We have François Colbert. He's professor at HEC Montréal. We have also Thomas Paris, researcher and professor on creative industries at HEC Paris, and Andrea Rurale, marketing professor at Bocconi, and Jose Maria Alvarez de Lara, professor at ESADE. They are all experts in cultural industries, and the four of them are or have been also the head of the masters in cultural industries at their respective industries. So for the debate, as Jose Maria was saying, we are going to address three challenges. Each of the speakers is going to have 3 minutes for each challenge first, and then you'll have 5 minutes to debate about each of the challenges between you. So I think we can start the roundtable, and let's go to the first challenge. First question, as Jose Maria said, is about digital. So after living this first acceleration of digitalization forced by COVID in most cultural sectors, how far do you think that the limits of digital will go? And do you think that digital is going to help cultural industries to grow? Maybe we can start with François.
Yeah, thank you. I guess depending on which part of the cultural industries we're talking about, some industries already are digital. I mean, if you look at film or music with the big GAFA, Netflix and so on, they really benefit from the COVID. In the performing arts and in the heritage sector, I'm more familiar with the performing arts. I know that Andrea, my colleague, is more knowledgeable than me in the heritage sector. But I guess from the point of view of us in Canada, our federal government gave financial incentives to the performing arts to turn digital during the COVID-19. At first, there has been people said, no, we're not in the business of digital. That's not something we know about. We're in the performing arts. But several of them found that, well, digital is, for during COVID-19, maybe it's a good way to keep contact with our patrons. And we've seen very interesting shows that have been put on online, and was able to reach consumers. I was talking with someone I know, the general manager of the Melbourne Symphony Orchestra. We decided to go live online, and usually in a given season, we reach 20,000 people, and we were surprised to have 1.5 million people all around the world listening to our concerts. So I think that the performing arts found something that could be used to keep contact with their patrons. Now, if we're talking about performing arts, we're talking about live shows, and from the point of view of the consumer, it's not the same thing to see a show on the screen and live. My guess is that patrons will go back to the theaters, and I don't know if the companies will still want to do something online. We'll see. I guess it's another way. It would be another way for them to reach their consumers, because there are a lot of people who, for all kinds of reasons, would like to see shows that are presented in big cities, for example, and if they live in small cities, well, they cannot access it. The Met, the New York Met, and others like La Scala or others, they are doing their show in movie theater. I think that the amount of people in the arts and cultural industries is going to adapt to this new phenomenon, and they may find that there is an interesting way of keeping with the patrons. How far will it go? I don't know, but I think COVID-19 was opening some eyes.
Okay, thank you, Francois. What do you think, Thomas? Thomas?
Yes, sorry. Thank you very much for inviting me. Some general ideas. The first thing is that the first lockdown gave us many lessons. The first one is that, as François said, there were very different, very various situations according to the industries and according to the companies or institutions towards digital. The second lesson is that digital brought many innovation and had a real supportive dimension. And I will focus on the third important lesson, that digital can be considered as a support to cultural activities, but it also can be considered another way because it brings other ways of consuming. The point is that I prefer, as a consumer, physical or live experience, but the the problem is that I'm not young anymore. And so the real question about the way digital will be supportive or not will depend on the way the young generations will consider the sustainability of the digital experience compared to the physical experience. The thing is that the new ways of consuming bring also other industrial organizations, other business models, and the essential question is the degree of sustainability. To see a movie or a concert in a theater does not have the same value as having this experience in front of a screen. Both practices can exist, provided that one of the two doesn't kill the other by weakening the economic model. And the very important point, the very crucial question is this one, to which extent the digital new ways of consuming culture will kill the historical or classical ways of consuming culture. And we can't really have some answers now. We will have to wait for the very end of the crisis and to consider the way the new generations, the younger generations, will imagine the difference of value between going into a theater or a concert hall or consuming a concert or a theater in front of the screen.
Thank you, Thomas. Andrea, what's your vision on what Thomas just said or other cultural sectors?
Thank you, and thank you a lot for this invitation. I do think that what we saw in this last year was something that for sure representing a great challenge for us all, for the people that are studying the arts management, for the people that are also the student particularly, and also for the operator, the practitioner. The digitalization that was actually went under a very strong acceleration during the course of the last year impacted on either the production and the consumption of the art, in the sense that we saw many cultural institutions, either performing art or dealing with museums and heritage, at the beginning of the crisis, the big challenge was to use the digital as a tool for communicating something that they had already established in their own basket of products, in a way. And after a while, even the more resistant to digitalization, and I'm talking from Italy, where most of the cultural industry are owned by the state, and where there is a very spread over lack of competencies in digital transformation. They realized that if the digital was conceived only for as a sort of tool for communicating something that was already present, it was not a winning strategy. The big challenge that the cultural institution, as far as my perspective, faced was to turn the approach versus the digital not only as a tool of communication, but also as a tool of production. It was clearly immediate to everybody that the mass consumption of art was very, very risky to obtain again. Just to give an idea, the Vatican Museum had typically in 2019 from 30 to 34,000 visitors per day. And nowadays, so last week, that the crisis apparently is considered something already passed, it's not enough to reopen the gate and allowing people to enter and to experience the art live, but we need to bring people to have the same need that they have 2 years ago. So the fear of being in contact with people of any kind of diseases is something that either in performing art and in the heritage sector is very present. So the idea of in a way changing the paradigm and not only wait until the crisis is over, but to exploit the stronger and more competent approach that the typical consumer have on of the digital device should push the institution in be proactive and not only reactive.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Andrea, for your vision on the public institutions. And Jose Maria?
Yeah, thank you for your intervention. Yeah. With the current situation, it says that digitalization culture seem have no limit, really. And it's probably true. So we don't know the limit. And now maybe areas have said, well, yet pushing new project in digitalization. Other was wake up with a new situation. Um, but the growth limit of digitalization won't be technological. We don't know what will be the limit of technology. We don't know. That the limit will come from really consumer, I mean, consuming this type of a culture, and also financing. But the industry should offer to the consumer both options, in my opinion, presence and digital. Right? It could be complementary. Uh, from a business point of view, the way of financing digital has to be very careful. You know, we in the past had some experience in press and museum giving all free access. And it's very difficult when you give free access to revert the situation to pay access. So that will be another challenge for the entities. No, we should use digitalization access as I would say a fish hook to attract new consumer, younger or consumer who are far from the presence. They cannot attend the presence for distance and so on. That is a good opportunity for both, but there is some danger of losing in some people on the presence, which is with the cinema. But Thomas has written an interesting book on that with the crisis of with the platform and the theater. That's all for the digitalization, the limit. Okay.
Okay. So we have now 5 minutes that you can debate between you in this digital challenge. Maybe compare. Okay, Francois, great.
Yeah, well, if I want to pick up on Thomas and my other colleagues, if we look at from the point of view of the consumer, it reminds me when television arrived and everyone thought that that movie theater will die. They didn't die. They had to redefine themselves. And I think with digitalization, we have to think the same way. If the companies in the arts are going for the digitalization for the different part of their seasons, then what in theaters and in museum, what we have to think about is people want to come to a theater for the experience, for the experience to be with people, for the experience to see the actual artist on stage. And I guess the main question, and it was addressed by 3 colleagues, our regular consumer, older, if I say that, and the younger one, are they looking for the same experience? Because the young people, yes, they are very much on their, but
Screens.
they are looking for experience. I mean, festivals, Montreal is a city of festivals. Well, it's full of young people. They come for the experience. Yes, they can have the experience experience online, but for them it doesn't replace the real one. So my question is, as usual, will we be able to give the experience different segments of the market are looking for? But I think that digitalization is there to stay, and I think it's a good thing, as my colleague said, to maybe increase the market, maybe to reach people we don't reach because they don't live in our city. But I mean, it won't add more. We have to think that the leisure time of our patrons is limited, so there will be more competition.
Thomas is asking for.
Sorry, yes, I totally agree with François. The notion of experience is key in this transition, but I think we have to be humble about the way we consider the value of experiences. I think it's true that festival is a very, very specific experience that you can't find on screen, for example. And I'm quite convinced that the younger generations think the same. But we must also admit that some of the practices of the new generations can be considered disruptive to us. For example, who could have imagined 10 years ago that the young generation wouldn't be interested anymore in possessing music, for example. They don't care about possessing music. Now it's something accepted, but I'm not sure we were able to imagine that 10 years ago. The same thing about the movie theaters. Many young people don't care anymore to go to movie theaters. We consider it's a very huge experience, very different from consuming movies on Netflix or on platforms. Many of them, more and more of them, don't have the same vision, because the collective dimension, which is very important in this kind of experience, can be found in other experiences for them. They give very, very importance to the collective dimension, but going to the movie theater is not the only way to get this collective dimension.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Andrea?
Yes, if I can elaborate on this, I think also that an important aspect is to consider the relation with digitalization in the cultural sector, without the pressure and the consequences that the COVID implied. Because on one side, during the pandemic, cultural industry were pushed in the thinking about adopting digital strategy in order to get new target, describe and explore new market. But then what we are assisting at the moment is that everybody is completely, everybody has enough of Zoom, of digital experiences and everything else. And as soon as the security regulation and health and safety regulation will allow, people directly tend to express they're willing to come back to reality. In the center of Milan, there is a movie theater, Cinema Beltrade, which is very, very small, a niche museum, cinema, and they open with social distance seats, and they opened the ticket off it at, I think, 6 a.m. in the morning, when there was the new law that allowed cinema to open again. And in 1 hour, all the tickets were fully booked. La Scala Theatre recently, on Sunday, opened a different concert open air in Milan in order to allow people to listen to the music not in the theater. And again, everything was fully booked. So what will be interesting to know is what will happen in 1 year time, in 2 year time, when the relation with the digital doesn't have any bias that the obliged and forced relation with the computer had in the life of everybody of us. So in this year, institutions that had the possibility to take this challenge and reorganize also their business model and adopt the possibility that the digital offer to remain on the market, will probably have the very benefit in the future when they will have in their own basket experience in presence and experience online. I'm very quite cautious of this, because what we are seeing in Italy is a situation where the public sector kept on supporting the art, but this support has as a consequence the fact that the management in those cultural institutions didn't have the urgency to reorganize themselves, reopen versus digitalization and finding new form of engaging and experience and allowing the new experiences. And therefore, in a way, the pandemic didn't teach anything to those group of people, to those, in a way, class of managers, because there is the excuse, the parachuting of the cultural sector that is keeping on providing support, even though the crisis was very urgent.
Thank you very much, Andrea. I think that this happened also in other countries, like our country. So now I think it's time to go to the next challenge. So,
sorry, Emma, there is a question on the.
Well, but the idea is that we are going to do the questions and answers at the end of the session. So, but we can reorganize it, no problem. Maybe we can do now the digital questions if you prefer. So. Let me see. Virtudes now is saying, we are entering in the data society out of audiovisual industry. Will cultural industries adopt this quickly? She means apart from the audiovisual sector, I understand, right, Virtudes?
Shall we answer now or at the end?
Jose Maria, we cannot hear you.
Yeah. Maybe you can group for at the end.
At the end, no?
Yeah,
in order to follow the... Okay. Yeah. Okay, so let's go to the second challenge and we'll answer all the questions at the end. So the second is related to sponsorship and fundraising. So do you think that the relationships between the private companies and the public institutions are going to change, and to what extent? Maybe we can start now with Thomas.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I think we have to consider that part of culture creation and dissemination is made by private companies, and some sectors are give very big importance to private companies. And patronage or company support is a way to compensate today the fall in public support, and it's quite a requirement because the public support in many countries tends to decrease. What we can observe is that this kind of financing takes now more and more sophisticated forms. Support is increasingly focused on specific projects, sometimes many very focused projects, and not support on the global institution. And the more detailed work is done to identify very relevant partners. And as it becomes a funding stream for more institutions, they will seek support from more companies, and with a broader range of companies. And this brings institutions, cultural institutions, to question the values they bring. And this is, to me, to be a path that still has a lot of potential, and that pushes cultural institutions to improve the way they carry out their missions. Now we have also to consider that sponsorship, private sponsorship, is only one way to reinvent the business models of the cultural institutions. They have to think out of their business models. They have to consider that the only public support is more and more complicated to get, and to imagine new ways of getting funds to carry out their missions.
Thank you. What do you think, Andrea?
Yes, regarding this point, I think that well, a premise is we need to consider which is the country that we are referring to, because there are different forms, of course, of support to the cultural sector that has, of course, an impact on how is needed, is necessary, and is supported also the private. My point of observation is that, and so if we consider particularly Italy, public and private are most of the time have formally, theoretically, a path, a ground to collaborate. When we come to the real form of collaboration, there are a lot of difficulties. Most, as I said before, the public sector is owning heritage sites and the most important Italian museums, and also the most important Italian theaters. Particularly the theater went through a reorganization at the beginning of the 2000, where they were turned into foundation, and in those foundations there is the public but also the private. The issue is that the amount of money that the private needs to give to the theater in order to be part of the board of trustees or the executive board, most of the time is not correlated to the real activity that they can exercise in the management of the sector. Because the people that are working in theater and also in museums are, in a way, worker for the Minister of Culture, or anyway in the public sector. So this implies the fact that the typical form of orientation to result, a sponsor that needs to have a real and effective manifestation on the impact, on the contribution that the support, the financial support provided to the theater, is very difficult to obtain. And the support of the private in the public sector at the moment in the cultural industry in Italy, and when I talk about cultural industry, I refer to museum and archaeological site and theater. So I'm not talking about, of course, culture, as it's also referring the question in publishing and music production. In this case, the support of the private comes only for a manifestation of support for the Italian cultural heritage in a broad sense, or for a reason of status. And with these premises, if we look to private companies that wants to have a real and concrete something back in a way for the financial support that they give to the art, is very difficult. Just to give an example, recently in these days there is the big fashion catwalk of the Toads in the Colosseum Rome. Diego Della Valle supported the restoration of the Colosseum, which is actually there for antonomasia, the Italian heritage site. But big debates that came after the contribution of Diego della Valle and Todd for the museum is still at the point of the heritage sites are for everybody. They don't need to be branded as something owned by an individual or a company. And this debate that is really unique, actually, doesn't allow any further development in terms of contribution and collaboration, private and public. What we see, and this is an exception that is very useful for the debate, what we have, particularly the peculiarity in Italy, is the church. The fact that when we explore how the cultural management is organized in Italy, we have typically private sector, private foundation, public sector, but also we have the Church or Vatican. And when we talk about Church and Vatican, it's very important because in that sense, even though it's not completely private, the way the management process, the center of responsibility, and the way the decisions are taken are very, very close to a private company, where there is one person or a committee of persons that decides. They don't have any kind of impact or debates that they have to take in the huge pachydermic field of the Minister of Culture, and the effective and the outcome of the decision is really, really concrete and perceivable immediately.
Thank you. Francois, what happened in Canada?
Well,
Your general vision.
yeah, in Canada, we have different models going on. A bit of European one, the British model with arts councils, and the US with private sector. The private sector in the US fund half of the budgets of performing arts organizations. The other half is selling tickets. There's very, very few public money in the US for performing arts, even for museums. In Canada, we're a bit different. If I use big averages, in the performing arts, 40% of the revenues of performing arts organization come from box office, 40% from the different arts councils, and 20% from private sector. It's a different mentality. And in Canada, there's more private sector than in Quebec. And funny enough, it can be explained because the province of Quebec is Francophone, Catholic, and the rest of Canada is Anglophone, Protestant. And for Protestant, if you are rich, it means that God loves you and you will go to heaven on the condition that you give back to community. Catholics, well, if you're rich, you don't go to heaven. So so that's really a big. But in the 80s, in the province of Quebec, there were no private money. The provincial government started to push arts organizations because they had budget problems to go for a private sector. So we had to build to build a private sector, to build a market. The main challenge when you rely a lot on private sector, like in the US or in the rest of Canada, is when there is an economic crisis. Well, the budgets for fundraising and sponsorship decreases in the company who support the arts. It didn't happen for the COVID-19. The private sector continued to help arts organizations. So our challenge in this province, the province of Quebec, is to continue to build, especially with young people, this idea that you have to give back to the community. So you have to give back by using it could be a hospital or a university, but also in the arts. So private sector here is in the is one of our market, and when we started the fundraising in the 80s, arts organizations were afraid that big donors or big sponsor would want to have its say on the season, on the choice of what would be put on stage. And they don't, because if they encourage one company, it's because they like what the company is doing. Otherwise, they just don't give money. So it's really a market that can be built. It takes time. I mean, we're working for over 40 years now, trying to build this market, and it's going well. So it's very different from Europe, because in North America there is very few organizations that own. For example, the government of Canada owns one performing arts center in Ottawa and 5 museums. All the other across Canada is private, not for profit, but private. The government of Quebec owns 2 performing arts centers and 3 museums. All the rest is private. So we don't have, like Europe, the companies you have, like La Comédie Française in Paris or La Scala in Milan. We don't have state-owned arts organization very much.
Thank you, Francois, for this approach, as opposed to the European one. And Jose Maria, what is your vision? And I think maybe we can skip the debate on this challenge and then go to the next one.
How are we on time? Are we on time or late?
Are we late?
Okay, I'm skipping.
But if we
skip, go to the next one.
No, you can go ahead now with this one, but we'll skip the small debate between you.
You are the boss.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. We define sponsorship only for a reason. It's sponsorship for selling more product, like music festival. We want to sell more beer, but whatever. And patronage will be more oriented at the image of the company or the value of the company. But now it's changing a little bit with digital. And in the cultural industry, the people who are trying to find fundraising or crowdfunding and so on, have to propose some package between the traditional offer and the digital, respecting what the company want to achieve in their objective from economic and value point of view. That will be the major change, mainly not for the private contribution and company, but the people in cultural industry who are managing this relationship with the company. They have to understand more what they want, what they can offer, adding all what is a digital, which is totally different. It's not exactly the same, but the content of what you're offering is nearly the same, And now, I'll read what you say about the experience, which is true. They're not the same experience, but look, some young people try to replicate experience at home, then invite friends to look some festivals they cannot be. So also, when you want to watch some series in TV, you meet friends at your home and you have some type of experience, which is not the same, like in a theater and so, but the idea of looking something only alone, no, that really is always an experience. It's just I mentioned what you said. Okay, that's all.
Thank you, Jose Maria, for sticking to the time. And let's go to the third challenge. The third one is related to the management of cultural industries, as we are in a business school. We are all in business schools. So what do you think is the role that should business schools play in all this new context? Andrea?
Well, the role of business school in this context. Well, all business school needs to provide as higher education tools for creating value in a society, and particularly in the cultural sector, the value generation process is a value generation. It's a process that doesn't necessarily include only the economic value, but given that one of the role of the museums or theater or any cultural industry is to increase the well-being of the society, a business school should help that society in creating people that are not necessarily, or better, are not for sure expert in the art, in the content of the art. So not expert in curatorship or artistic direction in a theater, or in a way with humanities background, but people that can look at those phenomena and finding out the way that are able to generate value. And to do so, what I think a business school needs to do in the future is to, in a way, overpass the approach of traditional competition that is necessarily and obvious in any kind of industry. But if we do all have as a goal generating value, we need to, and given the fact that the differences in culture has an important impact in the way culture is managed, my idea is finding out a way to create a strong network, not only in research, but also in something very practical, because it's obvious that in Bocconi, people cannot come and have a deep approach of how culture is managed in North America and Canada. We know the theory. We know that there are different approaches with the cultural policy projects, for example. But if you don't know the real content there, the field where culture is presented, and so culture in terms of production, but also consumption, everything will be based only on theory, as well as learning how when we talked before about the Church or the Vatican or the public sector in Italy has something in common with Spain for sure, with France for sure, but it's very different. And you cannot base the management of culture without practice. This is the reason why the network and the exchanging of experience, according to me, is at the basis. Because otherwise we keep on researching and providing tools that are very, very high. All the business schools are ranked. We are overwhelmed by importance of the impact factor of our publication and so on. But if we need to create value for the society, we need to consider that the network of business school that wants to see culture as a sort of product, not only to sell, but to generate value, we need to talk in the future more and more.
Great, thank you very much. Thomas, do you agree with Andrea?
Yes, I agree with Andrea, but I would like to add some element of the specificity of the MAC program. MAC means Media, Art and Creation. It is a program in HEC Paris that was founded in 1985 by Yves Evrard. And since the beginning, we have had several strong principles. The first one is that we want to prepare our students for a career, and not only for a first job, by giving them the keys to understanding the changes in the sectors, and especially the digital changes. The second important principle is that we have a cross-cutting approach, which allows students to draw inspiration from the responses of the sectors to the various issues. That is to say, we prepare students who want to go to the movie industry or to the performing arts or to the heritage industry, but we gather all these students in the same classroom, and we give them the same teaching. Because there are a lot of common problems, and depending on the case, some sectors are more advanced than others. And maybe last but not least, the third principle, the first principle in reality, that was the belief that the cultural sectors would need professionals who our conviction was that you don't manage theater like you would, and I think I'm sure you all agree with this point. But this is even more true today because the sustainability and diversity of the cultural sectors are linked to complex movements in connection with digitization, for example. And we need, and our students need to understand the impact of this movement, of these trends of digitization in more detail, beyond its obvious manifestation. We need, and our students need to grasp the theoretic forces of digitization. And so these principles lead us to be constantly on the lookout for changes in the sectors, to be able to help our students to understand the very trends and the very challenges of different sectors. Last point, we believe, as all of you, that these sectors are really essential, but we are also convinced that they are specific and fragile, and that it is essential to train passionate students with management skills to accompany these sectors and ensure that these changes are made in the most interesting direction possible.
Yeah. Thank you, Thomas. I think we all agree with your vision. Francois, would you like to add something?
Well, I agree with what Andrea and Thomas has said. Our role is to prepare art managers that will help artists to realize their artistic dreams. That's their main task. So, as Andrea said, as any business school, we provide the tools, the business tools, and as Thomas said, we need students who are in love with art and with artists. So there are different ways to get students who are in love with and the artist, either to recruit in our master program students who already have a bachelor degree in an artistic discipline. Our program in French at HSA, 99% of our students come. I mean, they have a bachelor degree in history of art or in music or in theater, or students who really are in love with one of the art form. Could be film, as Thomas said, could be theater, could be museum, could be dance, because they will be. We have to make sure that they understand they will always be second, not first, because the first, it's always the artist. It's always the arts, and you know, when people go to a business school to get a degree, they go there to be the first. And what we have to do all is to tell them you will never be the first. It will always be the artist. So are you ready to be the second one behind the scene and help the artist to and we'll give you the tools, the management tools that you will be able to apply. And because you know the artist and you want to work with them, well, you will be able to use those tools to put the arts first, and to bring the means, to bring the revenues for the artist to succeed, to help the artist to succeed. And the artists provide the arts, and us, especially if we are marketing directors, we have to make sure that when everything around the work of art goes well, so service to client, so that when the patron is in front of the work of art, nothing would bother him or her, and the person will be able to enjoy the arts. I think that's our goal.
Thank you, Francois, for putting out this vision of putting the art first, no? And the managers as in the behind the scenes. What do you think, Jose Maria?
Well, we mentioned what is the duality between content and result. Uh, Content, as a business school, there is the content is artist, but we are managing with the result. And we get result, we can have maybe a better content. So the main difference with your countries and with Spain is the cultural level, average cultural level of the population is higher in your country, in France, Italy, and probably in Canada rather than in Spain. So one of the roles in the business school should be to introduce some notion of cultural in all the student population, apart from a specific course. One of the curious things in Spain that we have at least three major business schools. So you know one which is a Sade, the other one I cannot mention, but you have it all in mind, known as a program for cultural industry, known. Esada had one before, known, which is seems to be curious. The level of cultural is growing in Spain, which is obviously what you can. But they need to realize that to be managed like you are doing with highly qualified and trained professionals to help this development, which is not the case. And, some years ago, we had some programs, but no longer that's my responsibility, but because now, and I'm not a young professor with a lot of dynamism at all, but we have a new one. We know that we try to do that. No? Only we had some research activity. Probably remember we create a research center with HEC Paris, Yves Evrac, and other people, and Harvard, and but the research activity was not so level what expected. So we did what we call a spin-off. That's the reason why it was from time to time was a Inov-Culture Foundation, which is a spin-off of this research center, but a very limited activity, which has it's a fact. That's all. Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much. If you are okay, I think we can now pass to the questions and answers. So, Marta, Gracia, do we have any questions? Okay, I'm having the first one. Question one. Well, I'll take the one from Virtudes. Apart from the audiovisual industry, will cultural industries adopt this quickly? What do you think? Any of you? Talking about digital.
I can go if you.
Great, Thomas. Merci.
I think all of the industries of the cultural industries are going digital today with very, very huge differences about the experience, as we mentioned earlier. The most advanced is video game industry because it was natively digital, but audiovisual and maybe more the music industry is going digital very, very quickly. And what is very very interesting with the music industry, not live, but music consumption, individual consumption, is that we can observe the kind of trends, the kind of changes involved by the digitization. Digitization seems to just simplify some consumption practices, but it has also very, very huge consequences on the general structure of the industry. In France, we would call it a startup, a company named Believe Digital. I'm not sure you know this company. Went to en bourse was introduced in the stock market 2 weeks ago with a very, very high valorization. This company was in the beginning a logistical company, a company that would provide digital distribution to artists and to music labels. But this company, by entering by the digital distribution, took a very, very important place in the music industry, and is quite, we name it the fourth major company now in the music industry, because the founders of the company understood very quickly that the digital would change totally the way the market is running. And so the growth of this company is very important. What is very important behind this case is that it changed also the way you hear music, but the kind of music you can hear. It changes very radically the diversity, the structure of consumption, and because it uses very, very thoroughly data in order to make marketing, and it leads to a situation in which they are able to focus very, very precisely the kind of target of such an artist, for example. And so music is at the very edge of the changes brought by the digitization, and we start only to understand the kind of transformation that are brought by digitization. And audiovisual is quite less transformed by digitization, because the movie theaters still have an importance in the movie industry. Sorry, I was long.
Don't worry, we have time now because I cut before. So
you want us to answer Marty? Is her or his first question? Yeah, I agree that YouTubers and Instagrammers are cultural players, of course. My point of view when I'm talking about our master in management is there's a difference between the UNESCO definition of culture, entertainment, and arts. For me, I'm interested by arts. To say that we're living the biggest ever cultural period of humankind, I think we have to pay attention, because to be careful, because in the 1950s, people were going to movie theaters twice a week, and they were listening to radio, and they were watching TV. That was the new phenomenon. I agree that we can consider culture in a bigger picture, but our role as director of master programs is to train managers, so managers of arts organization, and because YouTubers, for me, YouTubers and Instagrammers they are in the business of entertainment. They're not in the business of art. There's no artists there who are challenging us, who are studying phenomenon in their own way, putting each of us in front of our contradictions and so on. So I think we have to be careful not to mix the two. Entertainment is something. Sports is entertainment. It's very cultural. Hockey is Canada and United States, especially Canada. Art is something else. Art is really contributing to the discussion about humankind, human being, who we are, asking difficult questions, not putting your guts so everyone knows that you're sick or you love this thing or this thing. I mean, it's something else. For me, it's two different things. I'm very
If I can
as an art. I put the line before that, art or gastronomy. I agree that it's very cultural, but that's my definition of what I do. It's a personal definition.
Yeah, Andrea was asking to talk. Go ahead.
Yes, I want to elaborate a little on this because on a sense, I totally agree with Francois when this is actually the risk of exploiting and considering the digital and the big data and the online something that is going to completely overturn the relation, the very essence of the art. So asking questions and putting every individual in front of important issues. On the other side, I would like to share, to put on the table what's actually happening in Italy during the pandemic, where there, we said before, there are a completely lack of competence in the sculptural sector. And what happened? Important director of huge museums, that they realized that they are not into the digital, they ask Instagrammer to come to the museums completely empty, to tag themselves, to create stories and so on. And what is happening now, and so a huge amount of like for Kim Kardashian in the Vatican museums or Chiara Ferragni in other places, soccer player Icardi that was visiting different churches in Lecce. It happened that now that the museums are reopening, a lot of activities have been done in terms of correlating the presence of the visitor in the museum now with what was seen online with the Instagrammer. And the empirical evidence in 2 or 3 museums, so Uffizi, Vatican Museum and Pompeii, said that there were a significant impact of the role of the Instagrammer in bringing people there in the museum, meaning that the goal of reaching a new target was in a way succeeded. Again, we are coming back to the competencies, and only the manager is somebody that is able to understand that there are issues that are very managerial, so increasing the basis or opening to new public or creating a different perspective to look at the cultural product, and that's something. But on the other side of the medal is that once you have somebody that was never entered in their life in the Vatican Museum and they arrived just because Kim Kardashian was there 2 days ago, once they are there, you need to be able to communicate and to put the very person in there in front of important issue that Francois was referring to, with a language that probably is not the same language that is the language that I understand, or Francois understand, or Thomas and Jose Maria understand, in the sense that, again, I think that what is happening now is coming back to the role of the art as something that is inclusive or exclusive. So in the sense, we need to maintain, the cultural institution needs to maintain a message, a reason why to exist. The museum is a museum, it's not a way of consuming mass scale product, but at the same time, the accessibility to experience the art has so much increased, and the languages to talk to those people needs to change. So the topic that Francois is presenting is absolutely agreeable, but in the sense that we have a huge amount of people now in front of us, and our role is to train manager that needs to say, well, the description of the artwork needs to change in a way, because otherwise not everybody is able to understand it.
Thank you. Thomas wanted to speak also about this. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I also agree with François, and I agree also with Andrea that we can't ignore this phenomenon. But I would like to add some point because deciding what is culture and what is not culture is very, very difficult and is quite subjective. Maybe not with Instagrammers, and I think it's a quite extreme example, and we all agree that it's very difficult to consider it as culture. In some other cases, gastronomy or video games or design, for example, the question can be raised. And so in our program, we decided not to answer this question. We think that we can prepare some students without answering this question by focusing not on culture, but on creation as an activity, and an activity which involves a subjective point of view on the world. And with this large definition, we include fashion industry and gastronomy and architecture. And creation raises very specific managerial issues, and we focus on these issues, and we let our students to decide which kind of creative forms they want to defend. And so because this question is very, very touchy, we decide not to answer it and to have a very a little different question about creation.
Thank you. We have two more questions. First one, how do you measure the value generated by a cultural organization? How to measure the well-being of a society from a cultural point of view? Any of you? Thomas?
I can make a very short answer. My position is that we don't need to measure, and to measure is very dangerous. We have to claim that culture is essential because it helps to live together, it helps to understand the world, and so on and so on. When you decide to measure, to legitimate public support, for example, it is very dangerous because you change your goals. And so my point is that you don't have to measure, you just have to recognize that culture is essential, and culture helps many things and create a social linkage and so on and so on.
Thank you for being so clear. What do you think, Francois, Andrea, Jose Maria? Jose Maria.
Something, Thomas. What we have done has been published in a journal and Harvard to Business. We try to evaluate why a private company could invest in culture, and also why public administration should invest in culture, which is a different way. And don't forget that a company has to make profit or something like that. So how they can get profit from their investment in the cultural industry, right? And the motivation of public administration is totally different. But you can try to see why they invest or make money in such a cultural industry and not other. You know what the choice? The criteria of choice are difficult. For private company, it's clearer. Either make more profit or generating value for this company, and you can measure a company. For public administration, is a little bit different. That's all.
Francois also wanted to say something.
Yeah, we in here in my corner of the world, we always have some entertainment companies, sports companies, even in the arts, trying to evaluate the impact of arts, culture, through, for example, economic impact. Okay, economic impact is the big word. There is no value in this analysis, but it's very well used. My point on that is art, and I'm not using the word culture because for me it's too large. Art has two functions: protect our heritage, and second, educate. Educate because proposing a regard on phenomenon, of human phenomenon, and the same way that we say education, universities, and lycée or high schools are important for society, because we have a role of educating, challenging people in their in the what they believe in, challenging the beliefs, and this is very hard to measure. What will be? It's for me, art is contrary to entertainment, for example, is part of education and is part of protecting heritage. I mean, if you don't play a symphony, it will be lost because we're in the performing arts. So symphonies have a role of protecting heritage by playing symphony, and also have people discover new composers and so on. So a role of education. So that's how, and it's very hard to measure. Very hard to measure.
Yeah. Thomas?
And
Yes,
certainly not by economic impact, which is bullshit. Economic impact is bullshit. I know the model very well, and it's just plain bullshit.
Thomas?
Yeah, two complement points. The first one, I agree with José Maria that the issue is not the same with private companies and with the public sector. And private companies, when Louis Vuitton invests in art, Louis Vuitton has the capacity to measure the difference of its sales on the long term. So we can measure something. From the public viewpoint, it's quite different because your economic impact, as mentioned François, for example, you measure all the value created by the cultural consumption. For example, I go to a theater, I will bring my family, I will pay a taxi, this is an economic impact. I will go to the restaurant, this is an economic impact. And we can measure all these different values. But what we can't measure is the transformative effect on the show, on the performing, on the performance, on my family and me. And this you won't be able to measure. And this is the essential dimension of culture. I had this discussion with a former Ministry of Culture 2 months ago, and I said we don't measure the impact of the health system. We don't measure the impact of the educational system. We don't have to measure, on the public point of view, the impact of the cultural system, because it is quite the same as health and education. It is essential, and don't measure because you won't measure the good things, the good points.
Okay, thank you very much.
No, I want to say something regarding this because I think it's crucial. I do agree with all what is just said. I simply, anyway, would like to spend a few words on the fact that we can't help but considering that, and this is something that I always do, say to the students in the masters and when I talk in art context. So we are not actually a sort of venture. We are not people is not only of the same level of culture and a propension to enjoy culture of us all. Because what Thomas has just said is completely agreeable. I underline everything what he said regarding the fact that and also François, so there is no reason to measure the impact of culture because it's also insulting in a way. We don't measure the impact of anything else. But nevertheless, we are in a condition now that there are a huge amount of people, and not only the people in the street, but if we look in Italy, also people that are governing, that consider the fact that culture is something that is so hedonistic that if you like and you have this preference, you go and buy it. But there are something more urgent. It's more important to give money for repairing the street, or more money to give to import to the education, to the health system. And obviously, we don't want to make people starve to death and give this amount of money to restoring the Niki di Samotracia in Louvre, for example. But we cannot make this kind of comparison. But because we are living now in a situation where, and this is also the consequence of the pandemic, that everybody is free to express their opinion on anything. What Thomas has just said is something that you talk and you can argue with the Minister of Culture, but if you go in a supermarket down the street with people that have crisis, it's not obvious that they share his same approach. This is the reason, according to me, but this is my really humble approach, that we need to measure something. Even though I completely agree with Francois and Thomas, what is happening now in Italy is that I had to re-esumate the paper on the Guggenheim effect of the Getty Museum, the Frank Gehry Museum, and the calculation of the impact that the Guggenheim had on the city in Bilbao, and to adapt it to small cultural institutions in different parts of Italy, because they are in a situation of looking for funds, and the public is not supporting them too much. They need to go to private. And in order to talk to the private, which are not enlightened company owner, not always are those, they need to say, okay, remember that with this exhibition, we could contribute, I don't know, in creating an impact on the startups that were around us. We could contribute in providing number of projects for school for free, and so on and so forth. So it's a sort of compulsory road that at least we are in Italy obliged to follow, in order to give evidence to something that I do agree should be obvious. There is no reason to measure the impact of culture, because cultural impact is assignable everywhere culture is present in a country.
Thank you very much, all of you, for this so inspiring debate about the measuring of the culture. And unfortunately, we don't have more time for questions. So I pass now the turn to Jose Maria, who's going to explain the continuity of this event.
Yeah, you know that we are recording all the session, and we try to do some reduced version of that, with maybe half an hour, and we send you in some weeks, and you can do what you want with that. Furthermore, the Department of Communication Versailles asked me to write an article of what we have there and so on. We'll do that for next week in Spanish, but we'll do also a 4-language version. So I'll send to you, 4 language. You have a many language in this country. That's all. I'm really, really happy to see you, that you are all COVID-free, aren't you? Yeah, so congratulations.
Okay. Thank you, Jose Maria. And I pass now the turn to Marta Gracia, who is going to officially close the event. Marta?
Thank you, Emma. Thank you, everyone, for attending this event, especially on behalf of the Cultural and Creative Industries Club in Esadi Alumni. This is the closing event for this academic year. We will start the next one with more events, visits, presential visits to museums and exhibitions. For those who are in Barcelona, please don't hesitate to get in touch. And for those who are abroad, we also have chapters with cultural activities within the cities they are currently live in. So we all encourage you to follow us on our social networks as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Marta. Thanks to the audience for being here. And especially thank you very much, speakers, for such inspiring ideas and thoughts and measures that we all can take home. So thank you very much.